welcome to Association Transformation, our ongoing conversation advancing the impact and evolution of nonprofit organizations. We're always looking for diversity of thought. We're looking for new ideas, push the envelope wherever we can. And I'm excited to welcome my co-host, Andrew Theodore of Consort Strategy. Good morning. I just said Andrew Theodore.
Who is this Andrew Theodore?
Who is
this
that?
man?
Oh my
Who's
goodness.
that? Who is this?
I don't know, mate.
Well,
You're
we
obviously
gotta start
leaving
over.
a massive impression. So,
I know.
After a year,
I thought you were
she
being
doesn't know what
funny.
my name is.
I wish
I
I wish, Elisa, that his middle name was Theodore.
Theodore,
because that would have been
Teddy.
What is your middle
Andrew
name?
Teddy. I haven't got one.
No?
Andrew-
My
Is
parents
that
were
normal?
heathens.
Oh, my mom doesn't have a middle name either. My mom didn't have a
We haven't
middle
stopped recording, have we?
No, we're still.
Let's just keep it going. Let's just keep it going, right?
Keep it
That's
going.
part of the podcast, right? I'm not Andrew Theodore. I'm Andrew Chamberlain. Hi, Lise. Good to speak to you. How are you doing? There, Lisa Brewer Pratt, whose name I do remember because I'm good like that.
I thought we were going to stop making me the bad guy. I thought we talked about not making me the bad guy.
But do you know what? You're doing a pretty good job yourself, right?
Okay, Andrew, no middle name Chamberlain, my close friend from Consort Strategy. Welcome to our podcast of the future. Let's leave all this behind. Let's just leave this introduction in the past and focus on the future. Because that's
Nice
what we're here to
segue.
talk
I like
about,
that.
right?
That was
what we're here to
really
talk
good.
about.
That was really. I like that. That was excellent.
I'd like a fresh start. Many organizations these days coming out of a global pandemic are looking for a fresh start. And I think the future and an increased, what is it called? Futures literacy? I've just learned this term.
Yeah, I mean,
Tell
it's
me,
something that I've got quite excited about futures literacy. I think it's probably, as we talk about it, I think people are going to, listen in and think, oh, actually, yeah, we already do this, or I understand it, or, but actually as a concept, I don't think I really appreciated how well understood it is out there. I mean, UNESCO has actually defined futures literacy as a universally accessible skill that builds on the innate human capacity to imagine the future. They're actually calling it an essential competency for the 21st century.
Wow!
Now I love that. I mean, I came across it. The work that we're doing on the IAL's competency framework, the systems map. I've been looking at it as part of that, and actually I thought, God, this is really resonating with me. This is really, quite an exciting concept, and one that I thought would be good for us to have a chat about today. Go for it.
Well, and this is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So when we say UNESCO, that's what we're talking about. Yep. That's who we're talking about. And you're right. When I dove into this, I was astounded by how developed this is and what a futures literacy curriculum really looks like, what the expectations are and how it applies to the opportunities for an organization, not just to define their own future, but to be part of the global future and the positive global future that we're all hoping to contribute to. It was pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I think, it is. And one of the things that I really sort of when I read it, I thought, oh, right, yeah, okay. They use quite strong terminology in their definition. And when you look at the curricula, they use quite strong, it says, future literacy offers a clear field-tested solution to the poverty of the imagination. I mean, that's just blowing my mind. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I get that. But they go further and they say that future literacy is about moving beyond the dependency on the illusion of certainty that we use to plan. And then I started thinking, right, let me get my head around that.
I just got the chills.
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, let me just think, what does that actually mean? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Basically what they're saying is, as businesses, as enterprises, as communities, as society, we routinely, for want of a better phrase, kidding ourselves that the future is certain because it gives us today a sense of security. It allows us to have some semblance of confidence in planning for tomorrow, in willing to invest in tomorrow. But actually, if you put that, within any kind of sense of realism, that's wholly unrealistic, isn't it?
But before they dive into the, I don't know, the philosophical element of this, I mean, they UNESCO has a definition of this as the ability to imagine the future for different reasons in different ways. That to me is an accessible entry point for any organization to look at the future and futures literacy in, that seems to me a safe definition. We all need to look and imagine the future. You don't. I just don't want to scare people away by getting.
Safe is boring. Safe is boring. I know what you're doing. You're just trying to reel me back in here and be safe, Andrew, and work within these nicely defined parameters. And let's not rock the boat. And I'm not buying it. This is why the philosophical side of it is so exciting for me, because actually it totally resonates. Pandemics.
We have to make it achievable. All I'm saying is there has to be an entry point of clarity and achievability that will bring people to the study of the future. That's what this is.
We will. We'll get to that, but I think it's worth us saying, the reality is the only certainty that we actually have when we're thinking about tomorrow is the uncertainty of it. It hasn't happened. We don't really know how it's going to play out. Pandemics, climate change, economic crises, intergenerational conflicts, oppression of peoples around the world.
This is when we need a soundtrack. We need a score, like dun 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 dun. We need to have some music. Andy, can we get some music rolled into this? We need some dramatic.
But all those, they are dramatic. That's the thing. They are dramatic, life-changing issues that actually we have a very good ability within the association world of pretending that those big-ticket issues are not relevant to us. We are very, very good at pretending that we're working in some kind of professional bubble with all these massive issues. That doesn't really relate to us. That's not what we're about. And yet the reality is all these issues, all these problems, all these challenges, all these opportunities, all they serve to do in terms of when we're strategic planning, when we're thinking about what the future looks like for our businesses and for our associations and for our members, these issues serve to shatter conventional images that we've got of what planning, that we have in our heads when we plan. And we need, what future literacy is saying, move away from that. Accept that uncertainty is actually okay. And once you can do that, once you're able to do that, and you know what, I'm under no illusion, that takes a lot of bravery. That takes a cultural step change of significant proportions for some associations. I get it. I totally do. But actually, if as associations, as with all businesses, if we can and are able to imagine multiple futures, then that surely is going to help us not just survive, it's going to allow us to thrive. Do you not think? Am I being really brutal about associations? Am I being brutal in my assessment of it?
Not at all. I mean, this is relevant to every organization that we work with, to every organization in both the nonprofit and the for-profit world. I don't think anyone owns sole responsibility of thinking this way. I think it's an opportunity that everyone should be gravitating towards.
Yeah.
You and I are very committed to CSR and to the training and accreditation around social responsibility. I think they weave in nicely. But what you're talking about to me is embracing that uncertainty and creating and scenario planning aggressively, scenario planning for anything and everything. But at some point, given the resources you have at hand, you have to pick a path. You have to make a decision.
And I don't think, absolutely. I don't think, completely, it's completely unrealistic to say to, a team, be it the board of directors, the leadership team, whomever, it's wholly unrealistic to say, right, come up with every feasible scenario so that we're prepared for every, that's just insurmountable challenge. All it would do would demotivate everybody because it would just seem so wholly unrealistic. But I like that term you used there, which is, scenario planning aggressively. That and that does link to an association's ability to or inability to embrace risk to understand risk and to value risk. I think a lot of the time we're afraid of risk. I understand why. We're as a board of directors, for example, we're custodians of not just the cash in the bank, but we're custodians of the reputation of the organization, of the direction of the organization, of the value proposition, for however long we're sitting on that board. So I get that as a significant responsibility. But for me, I think, to really make effective use of that responsibility, to embrace that responsibility, is to embrace risk and to embrace it and to within the context of your strategic planning.
Right. And that's I'm so glad you brought that up, because you and I are avid strategic planners. I'm a strategic planning nerd. It's what I do with many of my clients, as do you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place for this conversation. And while we're trying to focus organizations on a more concise future plan, we can't have 10-year strategic plans anymore. We need to focus in the immediate future. But this conversation needs to be had as well. And it's different. Understanding the role of the future and thinking creatively, scenario planning for a multitude of futures, I think is very... It's exciting, but that's my question, is what does this mean in practice? All of these things seem very philosophical, very high level. What does this mean in practice for an association executive? You need to do a strategic plan. You're about to come up on the end of yours. You've learned a little bit about, the futurists, futures literacy. You want to be that big picture, innovative leader. How do you put this into practice?
Well, I think a lot of it is about how you accept that uncertainty is inevitable, and that actually plans are plans, they're not actuals. And I think that's a really, we spend a lot of time talking about, in that context, we talk about budgets. Budgets are just budgets. They're not actuals. It's not what you've spent, it's what you're planning to spend. But things change. And I think once you accept that uncertainty is a reality, and it's arguably the only reality in which the only reality in which we're working in, it becomes much easier to shape and control the association's direction, because you're much more you become much more flexible. Accepting that uncertainty is real, is your reality. No, and that doesn't mean that the world is out of control. That doesn't mean that, the association and how you lead the association is beyond your control. Far from it. But what it does mean is, at a practical level, you're able to innovate and take advantage of innovations far more readily than perhaps you are if you're working within the stringent confines of your plan. If that's how you view your strategic plan. I think at a practical level, embracing and understanding scenario planning as part of your strategic endeavours, I think it makes it easier to make sense then of novelty, of shocks and surprises when they happen. It makes it easier to change direction, and it makes it easier for you to see genuinely distinct alternatives. And I think too often we are beholden to our strategies as though they're right, we've written this and that's it now. Our lives are set in stone for the next however long this strategy lasts for. And I would say, and I think you see this as well, the organizations who recognise these strategies, these strategic plans as live documents, and are willing to get back into them and change them and say, actually, the world is different now, we're going to change. Those are the organisations who are far more successful in serving the membership and realising the value proposition that is relevant. And when we're talking about future literacy, let's be fair, this is why I said at the start, we're not really talking about anything that a lot of people aren't already doing. It's just using different language for it and understanding it in a different way.
Well, and I like the idea. I think it becomes easier to innovate when you have those scenarios and those options in front of you. The future becomes actually less scary. and less uncertain when you've created all these
Yes.
possible situations. So you're not taking as big of risks. You're not talking about U-turns or total recalibrations when things go differently than your original plan, because you've already thought through these things. And it becomes easier to innovate and take advantage of innovations when you've done this. I love this as an exercise for your senior team. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about these scenarios. I think these are fun, creative, innovative things that let a senior team, and then maybe even ultimately a board, brainstorm these things. And I think it helps them, be part of that future at the same times that it flexes that creative and futuristic muscle.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so then and I think for me, 2 points there. When you talk about, you use the phrase, possible scenarios. I think that's really key. Is that this isn't about us imagining the impossible. Some things are impossible and completely improbable. It's about making sure that we are cognizant of the possibilities, both in a negative way, what could happen that's going to impact us negatively, but also what could happen that would allow it, that we can exploit, that we can capitalize, and we can, really, embrace a fresh direction because a change has impacted us. And when we ran the session for the ASAE at their annual meeting earlier this month, when we spoke about the function of generative thought and generative engagement at board level, this is what we're talking about. That is future literacy in practice. It's just another way of looking at it. Giving yourself permission, embracing your responsibility to think about the future and how to position the association within those future contexts. And again, plural, contexts, because we don't know what that's in reality. We don't really know what the world is going to look like. And if we accept that, as you rightly say, it becomes so much easier for us to navigate the future and accept that that we have a responsibility as directors and as senior executives to be generative in our thinking, and that is actually a core component of our role as the association's senior leaders.
You know what? I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, today is the day of our ASAE session. I think it comes out today. So leadership as governance, Andrew and Elisa on the ASAE stage. I think that actually happens today. So congratulations, my friend, on your first ASAE session.
Thank you very much. No, it was it was an experience to savor. Unfortunately, it wasn't an in-person one. Next year, though. Next year. Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, this becomes, when we talk about governance as leadership and that opportunity to innovate and ideate and think beyond just fiduciary obligation, this is really the end game of that, is this futures literacy. And I like the framework that has been given to it by UNESCO. I think that almost makes it safer because someone has built a framework around it and outlined what tackling the future may look like and how to think about it. So this may even just be the next step of governance as leadership, is a futures competency. And it takes bravery, though. It's going to take a bravery. It's going to take resilience. It's going to take a strength of character amongst the executive staff, the executive ranks, and the board. Because as a board member, you have a certain term you're rotating through, and to have ideas that and scenarios and situations that may need to be carried out by the board 10, 15 years from now. Is an interesting conversation to have,
but that is the very definition. Well, certainly the very definition of how I understand leadership. Mm-hmm. That is what I want to see in my association leadership teams, both the volunteer leaders, and the staff. I want to see that bravery. I need to know that that's happening at the very, very the senior conversations because that gives me confidence in the board. It gives me confidence in the organization that actually, when I'm going through my own trials and tribulations in my career, or I'm needing support and advice, I'm needing, at my network, well, I know that these guys, this association, my association, is always going to be there because they're having these tough, difficult conversations and being brave about it. That, for me, is the very essence of the leadership function at board. While we're recording this, let's trademark or copyright your idea there about governance and leadership moving into future literacies. No one else is stealing that. That one's ours, okay?
Got it. For the record. But, I love so much of what UNESCO has done. I mean, they talk about using the future and becoming more skilled at using the future. The future in itself is certain. There will always, there will be a future, and that future, while it will be changing and it will be uncertain, it does need to become an ingredient in our planning, an ingredient in our mission and vision, and how nonprofit and associations are going to impact their community, their profession, their industry. And I think too many people are waiting and reacting to these future circumstances, these future realities. And we've talked for the last 18 months about pivoting. I'm so damn tired of pivoting. Can we start proactively determining the impact we want to have on the future and create those scenarios and those situational goals? Instead of the future impacting us and us being victims of the future, let's build that future.
Oh, that's a really good way of...
That's
really good. I really like that. Really, victims of the future. No, actually, I really do we want to trademark that one? I don't know.
Are there any ideas of mine that you want to trademark while we're here?
All of them.
Get out of here. No,
but I do like that.
You researched this.
I
love it. It inspires me. I mean, you did the research for this one, and I so appreciate it, because I honestly, I wasn't familiar with UNESCO coming into this. As someone who doesn't always take the biggest risks in some of these contexts, it gave me a structure. It gave me an understanding of what an organization could tackle, could bite off, and how they might approach this type of discussion. Because it can get really, you and I have facilitated many a board meeting, and this can get really big and really out of hand real quick.
Yeah. Or it gets shut down straight away. Because they recognise it's potentially going to be too big, and that's not what we're about. But let me ask, well, yeah, it is. It is scary. It is, which is why I understand why, just generally we do, we do have this, to quote UNESCO, this dependency on the illusion of certainty. I get that. I also recognise the fragilities that it creates. I get that. I understand it. I do. I'm totally empathetic. Let me understand though, when you walk into your next strategic planning session, are you gonna take this? Is this going to be one of your in your toolbox, as it were? I'm not saying for every. It's not right for every client, depending where they are.
You're right. It's not right for every client, but I can think of one or two clients off the top of my head right now where we're in the beginning of that strategic planning engagement, and this might be one of those challenging conversations to see where the board is, to almost test how innovative and test their future literacy, to see what they believe possible. I imagine maybe even building kind of a group exercise around this as a test of the board's stomach, their appetite for some of these conversations, and also to test their creativity and vision. I do a lot of visioning, what I call visioning sessions with boards, and I think there's probably a lot of crossover here, but I like the structure and credibility that UNESCO's framework gives. I mean, I want to become a student of this. I think this is fabulous, and I hope we get to talk about it more. I don't know. Is there a credential for this? Can I go take a UNESCO workshop? I don't know.
My work here is done. Is done. As soon as Lisa decides she's going to get qualified, that's it. My work is done. Get
out of here. Okay, I think I've had enough compliments of you. Those are out of my system. But today is our ASAE session, our launch to the world. Hopefully more people find us via the podcast, who are introduced through us by ASAE. Hopefully they stumble upon Association Transformation as well, because you can find us now wherever podcasts are, and bookmark us, make us one of your favorites. But that was an enjoyable experience too. More enjoyable than today with you, but I will.
Jesus. Honest to God, you can't help yourself, can you? You can't help yourself, honestly.
Sometimes it's
honest
too
to
easy.
goodness.
It's too
I'm just
easy
hoping the
sometimes.
next year's is also virtual as well. There you go.
Oh my God! Stop it! Stop it! Well, that's the funny thing for those who have been tuning into the Andrew and Elisa show for all this time. We still have never met in person.
Nope.
Never. This is a fully virtual, digital first relationship, and it's
long
pretty
may
amazing.
it continue is what I'm thinking. But yeah.
Again, such a jerk.
After the grief you give me, honestly. Anyway, take us home, Lise. Take us home.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you listening, and we encourage you to reach out and share your ideas for a topic or suggestions for a guest. You can tweet us at Association Transformation or email us hello@yourconsort.com, and we'll draw upon that network and that creative thinking to continue the best conversations about associations and nonprofits. We'll continue to push the envelope and bring you interesting and creative discussions. Until then, stay well and put your members and your mission first.
Association Transformation is brought to you in partnership between Consort Strategy and Brewer Pratt Solutions in support of the Institute of Association Leadership.